See a haunted, abandoned tuberculosis hospital used in both world wars, an island where 6,000 tons of mustard gas was produced, now taken over by rabbits, and what island has the highest concentration of plastic garbage in the world. These are more forbidden ruins that historians are too afraid to explore. Beelitz-Heilstätten is an enormous abandoned hospital complex about 30 miles outside Berlin. Originally built in 1898, it was first designed to treat tuberculosis patients, which was a huge health issue at the time. The hospital had 60 buildings meant to provide the best care, lots of fresh air and rest for patients, but when World War I hit, it became a military hospital for the Imperial German Army. The soon-to-be head of the Third Reich himself was treated here after being wounded in the Battle of the Somme in 1916. That fact alone makes the place pretty eerie. And then during World War II, it was once again used as a hospital for wounded German soldiers. After the war, the Soviets took control though, and it became a Soviet military hospital. Erich Honecker, the last leader of East Germany, was also treated here for liver cancer in the 90s, so there's a lot of history here. Most of the hospital is abandoned now, and it's pretty spooky. There are some parts that are still used for things like neuro rehab, but most of the complex is just crumbling. It's just empty halls with peeling paint, rusted equipment, broken windows, pretty much your quintessential gross, grimy-looking horror movie abandoned hospital. Okunoshima Island off the coast of Japan is a small island that has a really dark history. During World War II, this tiny speck of land became the site of a chemical weapons factory where over 6,000 tons of mustard gas was produced. The factory operated between 1927 and 1945, but after the war, the Japanese government covered up what happened there. All the records were destroyed, and the island was pretty much left to fade into obscurity. Today, the island is known for something you'd probably never associate with mustard gas, though: adorable little rabbits. They're all over this island. The chemical weapons factory is now abandoned as well, and even though the island is open to the public, visitors aren't allowed to enter the old plant because it's still contaminated with dangerous chemicals. People believe there may still be hidden caches of mustard gas on the island, but no one really knows because, again, the records were burned. Henderson Island in the South Pacific is completely uninhabited. No tourists, no factories, almost untouched. Sounds peaceful, but somehow the place is full of plastic and garbage. When researchers visited in 2017, they were pretty shocked. Despite no one living there, the island was covered in plastic waste. In fact, it has the highest concentration of plastic ever recorded, with up to 671 pieces of plastic per square meter. The sheer volume of trash on Henderson is just nuts, with over 17 tons of plastic found on the island. You see, Henderson is found within the South Pacific Gyre, a massive ocean current that gathers trash from all around the Pacific and then leaves it on the island. The researchers found plastic items from 24 different countries all washed up on this one island. Every day, over 3,500 new pieces of plastic wash ashore. There have been efforts to clean up the island, with a UK government-led expedition in 2019 removing 6 tons of plastic, but it's still an ongoing issue. It's a wild reminder of just how far-reaching the problem of plastic pollution has become. In Bango City, Philippines, there's an abandoned building that has a very creepy history: the Diplomat Hotel. Originally built as a religious school and a vacation house by the Dominican Order in the 1910s, the hotel was transformed during World War II into a place of pure horror. During the Japanese occupation of the Philippines, the building was a site for mass killings, with many refugees being slaughtered by the Japanese soldiers. After the war, the building was bombed. It was eventually rebuilt as a hotel in 1947. Then in the 70s, it was remodeled, but by 1982, after the death of the hotel's owner, it fell into disrepair. Over the years, people have reported strange things happening in and around the now abandoned building. Locals claim that the hotel is haunted by the spirits of those who died during the war, and some say they've heard horrible audible, almost otherworldly screams coming from the property late at night. It's said that the hotel is home to the ghosts of priests, nuns, and people who were beheaded during the war. The Valley of the Kings is famous for being the burial site of Egypt's pharaohs and powerful nobles, and it's one of the most well-known archaeological sites in the world. Over the course of nearly 500 years, between the 18th and 20th dynasties, tombs were carved into the rock to house the mummies of kings like Tut and Ramses, but aside from its history, the valley is also known for its eerier stories. Visitors to the valley at night report hearing strange noises like screams and screeching sounds. Some people even have claimed to see a chariot pulled by fiery horses, thought to be driven by King Tut, racing through the desert at night. The most infamous part of the valley is King Tut's tomb, once said to be cursed. Ever since the tomb was discovered in 1922, those involved in the excavation have suffered misfortune. Lord Carnarvon, who founded the expedition, died shortly after the tomb was opened, and some of the other people involved in the dig also met untimely ends. Stories of King Tut's cursed tomb fueled the belief that not only the tomb, but maybe even the entire valley was cursed, and it's kept people wary of the place to this very day, especially after dark. In the Gansu province of China, there's an entire city that's been abandoned for decades. It's called 404, but it doesn't appear on any map and doesn't have an official name. The city was built in 1958, and its purpose was kept completely secret for years. At one time, it was home to around 100,000 people, but they weren't regular citizens. The people who lived there were top nuclear scientists, doctors, and engineers, and their families. All moved there to work in China's nuclear bomb program. 404 had everything you'd expect in a town: its own government, police force, even a TV station, and a prison. But what set it apart from any other city was the underground defense system they'd built in case of a nuclear attack. In 1964, just 6 years after 404 was finished, China successfully detonated its first nuclear bomb in the Gobi Desert, not far from 404. Eventually, though, the city started falling apart. By 2006, cave-ins and decay made it unsafe, and the people who lived there were moved out, and it's been empty ever since. People rarely ever talk about it. No one ever goes there. It's almost like it never even existed. Portlock is a ghost town in Alaska that was once home to a busy salmon cannery in the early 20th century. By 1951, though, the town was completely deserted. It had started to fall apart in the 40s when strange things started happening. Hunters would go into the woods and never return. Sometimes their bodies would be found, though, mangled and unrecognizable. The locals started to believe that something was out there hunting them. The eerie stories didn't stop there. People claimed to hear strange sounds at night, like growls or large footsteps in the forest. Some say they saw large, hairy creatures moving between the trees. Many began blaming the mysterious vanishings on a terrifying creature called the Nantinak, described as a large, hairy beast similar to Sasquatch or the Yeti. With all the unexplained disappearances and the sightings of the Nantinak, people decided it was probably time to leave and go somewhere else. By the early 50s, everyone had abandoned the town. No one has really lived there since. Even today, Portlock is one of the most avoided places in Alaska. It's hard to get to, sure, but it's also feared for what might still be lurking in the shadows. The Capuchin Catacombs in Palermo, Italy is an underground burial site that holds thousands of skeletons and mummies. Built in the 16th century, they were meant to house monks, but over time, wealthy or otherwise important citizens started being buried there too. As more bodies were added, they were preserved in various ways, some of them standing, others lying down, some mummified, some just skeletons. There's something deeply unsettling about how these bodies are displayed, as though they're still alive, but just frozen in time. Many of the bodies are in their original clothing, and the ones that are mummified, you're looking at the faces of people who lived centuries ago. In 1920, the last body was added to these catacombs. Of course, because of the way the bodies are arranged and how creepy the whole place feels, there are stories about hauntings. People have reported hearing whispers or strange noises coming from the catacombs, and some even say the eyes of the mummies will follow them. One of the most famous mummies is Rosalia Lombardo, a young girl girl who is almost perfectly preserved. Honestly, we can't even show her on here because it's just too creepy. It's really, icky. Yeah, the preservation is so good that some visitors have claimed to see her eyes open as if her spirit is still trapped in her mummified body. Craco is a beautiful abandoned town in southern Italy, perched on a hill in the Basilicata region. This place has a history dating back to the 8th century when it was founded by the Greeks, and over the years Craco grew, especially during the medieval period. The town's economy was mainly built on agriculture and craftsmanship. It wasn't just a small village, it was an important community for a long time. But things started going wrong in the 20th century. In 1963, a massive landslide hit the area and forced many of the residents to leave their homes and move down to a nearby valley. The town didn't get much of a break after that. There were earthquakes in 1972 and 1980 that caused even more damage. By that time, the place was pretty much uninhabitable, and the government officially declared it a ghost town. The remaining people had no choice but to leave, mainly for safety reasons. Centralia, Pennsylvania is a small town that was abandoned thanks to a fire that's been burning underground since 1962. It's often described as one of the most dangerous and eerie abandoned places in the United States. The fire started in a coal mine beneath the town, and it never really stopped. The entire town was eventually evacuated because of the toxic gases leaking from the ground, and over time, homes, businesses, and roads were consumed by the fire. The town is still technically off limits to visitors, and while a few people still live in the area, most of the buildings are gone, and the land is cracked and scarred. There are signs warning people not to enter, as the ground is prone to sudden subsidence, meaning whole sections could just collapse. The whole town feels like an opening to hell, with smoke constantly seeping from the ground, and the fact that the ground under your feet can fall away at any time, sending you plummeting into a decades-long raging fire down below. With all that said, I've been your host, James. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.